Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be providing my book review of the book The Voyage of the Forgotten by Nick Martell. This is a new release book, the third book in the Legacy of the Mercenary King, written by Nick Martell. It released in November of 2022, so it is a new release book. And this was a book that took a while getting to me, and then it took me a while to get to the book, and once I started reading the book, it took me a while to read the book. So it took much longer than it should have. Normally this type of thing I try to read on release day if I get it on release day, but this one, it just took like a whole month for me to get to the finish line with it. Not saying it took me a month to read it, just, you know. So this is the third book. I have read the first book, which I thought was fairly good. I gave it like a 7 out of 10. I thought the first book was very well done, an excellent debut, and kept me engaged. I thought that book 2, The Two-Faced Queen, was a okay read. It was frustrating mostly. There were some high points in there, but overall I kind of felt meh about it. Then we get the third book, The Voyage of the Forgotten. This is a book that has some amazing moments in the book, that as you read those moments, you're like, this is some superb writing, some superb setup, some superb payoff. But as a whole, I think that this is a highly disappointing novel. I think that it is a letdown. It is the weakest of the trilogy, I think. Because I think that he tries to do too much in this book. So I think that when you look at the whole legacy of the Mercenary King, you see an author, Nick Martell, who is trying to expand world building and magic systems specifically. He's really trying to experiment with magic systems. He's also trying to really play with history and revelations about a culture's history. And the attempts that he makes in these books is excellent. That he is trying to do new things with these characters and with the world building and with the magic system. He's trying to do new things. The way that it's a first-person narrative, but the character is like losing his memories, and also he's trying to deal with another character who is potentially losing their memories. There's a lot of complex elements to this that I think are really appealing to a lot of people. My problem is that because of how complex Nick Martell made this third book in particular, and also because of how much he tried to do in this book, it becomes boring and it becomes too much to process as a reader. I think that all three of the books, probably the first book is mostly good as is, but I would make some changes to it though. But I think books 2 and 3 needed to be substantially shorter, at least 150 pages, if not 200 pages shorter. I think that Nick Martell swung for the fences, and it just didn't work out well. I do want to say I like the first book enough that I will try to read more Nick Martell books in the future. I'm certainly open to him as an author, and there's some stylistic things that I think that he does that are really enjoyable. The problem, though, is that he does some things that I also don't like, and it's enough that it soured me on the trilogy. Like, I feel meh about it at the trilogy as a whole now, because it just felt like it went downhill. In this book, it's so hard to get into the plot details of the book without talking about the spoilers behind the book. What I will say, without talking about spoilers, is that when it comes to romantic subplots, there are some great explorations in this book, and that's probably one of the stronger elements of it. This book also has this sense of dread where the reader knows something is happening, and that's because this book is a countdown. You know, it goes, whereas the first few books you start with chapter 1 and you move on, this one starts with chapter 68 and is counting down to chapter 1. And you're building to that big climax that you know has to come eventually, but you kind of don't want it to come. And so it's all about spending time with the characters and really getting to spend some last potential moments with some of them, because you know some of the characters are going to die. the thing is, a lot of these characters are rude characters. They're mean. They're vulgar. They use a lot of language, and so they're not pleasant people that you'd want to hang out with. At least in other fantasy series, the characters either aren't that vulgar, or they make up their own unique swear words. This is why the Wheel of Time characters, for example, work so well, is because they're not using actual swears, they're using made-up swears, so they still feel somewhat clean to you as a reader. In this book, they're actually using real-life swears, and it's just frustrating. Also, because of how complex he makes the magic system, characters are attacked or are shot or magic is used against them. And you just don't understand, because of how complex his magic system is, it's so hard to determine whether a character actually is supposed to die when an action scene happens, or whether, it's expected that they'll get up from the accident, or whether they're expected to die and they don't end up dying, so they come back and it's a surprise. Like, all of that, it was very hard to navigate. So every time a character was supposed to die, I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Because I just didn't understand the magic system. And that's what's really disappointing to me, is because there are concepts here that are really good. And that's the point I hammer home about this whole trilogy. Nick Martell has some superb concepts. I think that he just was influenced by some of the wrong things. For instance, Brandon Sanderson blurbed the first book, calling it excellent. And Brandon is known for his extra long tomes. And I think that people see that and say, in order to have a successful fantasy trilogy, you need to have really long tomes. But I think that Terry Brooks proved that you can have really short books. His books are 300 pages. I think that he proved, or Michael Moorcock has even like 200-page books. I think that those types of authors prove that you don't have to make it extra long. And I felt like this was just meeting that quota, at the same time trying to tackle too much. I think that the authors talked about this being a 5-book series, and I think that actually would have worked better, because it feels like he was just cramming things in here, and it was just too much because of that. There are some characters that I highly enjoyed here. I really enjoyed reading about Dark, his character. I also thought that what we got of Angelo Shade was interesting. I also thought that there's a spoiler character, I won't say who this is, but there's a spoiler character who comes in towards the end that reveals some of their backstory that I thought was really interesting. And he also reveals some of his family's backstory that's interesting. But other than that, I did not love the characters in this book. I just couldn't connect with them. And that's really sad for me to say. So this book, I gave it like... an honest review would give it more like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. But I think I gave it like a 5. I didn't actually rate this book on Goodreads, because I didn't want it to hurt the author's overall ratings system. But I think I have to give this like a 4 out of 10, because it was disappointing. There are, as I said, there are scenes, there are moments, there are elements of this book that I thought, man, Nick Martell has potential. But as a whole, you have to look at how the whole book flows. It just didn't work for me. So I apologize if you love this trilogy. But that's my thoughts on Voyage of the Forgotten, the 3rd book in the Legacy of the Mercenary King. Woohoo! Another series finished. That's very nice. It's very nice to tick off finished series here, finished series there. So that is my opinion on The Voyage of the Forgotten. If you've read this book, let me know your thoughts. Did you really like the book? If you did, wonderful. I'm happy. I hope other people like this book. I just didn't. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.